January 13th, 1952. It was really snowy. Everywhere. Okay, not everywhere, but in the Sierra Mountains it sure was. Near Donner Pass. So much snow. So much whiteness. Fluffy whiteness. Like a fluffy dog, only cold. Very cold. Not fun. Not fun. And it wasn't even just that there was a lot of snow. No. See, there were also 100-mile-per-hour winds blowing the snow all over the place. And this was a particularly annoying issue for the railways because trains had to pass through that area, and the snow kept getting in the way. One such train was known as the City of San Francisco. This was a streamlined passenger train that began operations all the way back in 1936, traveling between Chicago, Illinois and Oakland, California, and it was actually a jointly operated train. It wasn't just handled by a single railway. At the time, it was operated by the Chicago and Northwestern, Union Pacific, and Southern Pacific. Though in 1955, the Chicago Northwestern would stop being a part of it, and the Milwaukee Road would take over instead. But either way, at the time, it was the first three I mentioned, and even later, by 1971, Amtrak would take over, though they wouldn't operate it at its full capacity very long, canceling it in 1972, though it has been succeeded by the California Zephyr. Regardless, it was a pretty successful train for a long time, and on that day it had to get through, but there was all this snow in the way, and Southern Pacific was doing their best to deal with this problem, but it seemed like the more they tried, the more snow just replaced the snow they moved. Just the day before, January 12th, 1952, the city had been stopped by a snowslide 10 miles west of Donner's Summit and had to be dragged back to Norden by a cab-forward steam locomotive. The city then had to detour down the eastbound track to reach Sacramento. The railroad had sent two other steam engines with rotary snowplows to clear the westbound rails, but those managed to derail because the snow was not just a lot of snow. I mean, it was a lot of snow, but it was also really heavy, thick snow, and even the rotaries were struggling. Because of this, the westbound rails were still blocked, so the city, scheduled on the 13th, had to follow the previous day's detour on the eastbound line. That was fine. It would not delay things too badly, and as long as the line was clear, it should be okay. At 11:23 a.m., the engineer of that train, Tom Sapinor, moved out the 3-unit diesel consist from the Norden siding and headed down the eastbound tracks. These diesels were not EMDs, they were actually Alco PA2s, led by number 6019, and they were able to pick up their passengers and move out, but things didn't go quite according to plan. The train had to ease along, because the snow was still a problem. They'd been continuously trying to clear the lines, but as I mentioned, every time they cleared it, more snow just blew onto the track, and snow was still falling too. It was a constant fight to keep the lines clear. The train had to crawl down the hill through a canyon of ice and snow to Crystal Lake, which was about 15 miles west of Donner's Summit. There, they crossed over back to the westbound line and continued on, but as they moved along the open ridge that was heading towards Yuba Pass, the crew became worried because the snow they were pushing through was about 6 to 12 feet on the track. The diesels were doing their best, but they weren't really designed to handle snow that was this steep, and they didn't have a proper plow. They didn't have a wedge in front or a rotary. They were just themselves. They had a snow plow built on the front of them, but it was small, meant for like maybe a foot or two, not 12. The heavy snow began to push back on the modern diesels. The engines struggled to keep going and were eventually forced to stop. Engineer Tom reversed the diesels to back up and try again, or maybe call for help, but it was only then he realized that actually, we can't move backwards either. Interesting. Yeah, they were really, really stuck. Like, completely locked down. The diesels weren't powerful enough to deal with the snow. They were trapped, and shortly thereafter, the extreme cold would wind up freezing their wheels to the track. They were going nowhere. So that wasn't good, because they had quite a number of passengers on board in addition to themselves, and now they were stuck in the mountains, in the cold, in blizzard conditions. Oh boy. Realizing this was a very serious situation, especially with 226 souls on board, they weighed their options for how to deal with it. At the time, the locomotives still weren't equipped with two-way radios. They had no way to call anybody for help while they were on the open line. As a result, the roadmaster, J.T. Fulbright, who had been in the cab with both Engineer Tom and the fireman, Gordon Painter, suited up and walked through the snow to get to Yuba Pass. He made it, somehow, despite the conditions, and there he was able to telephone for help because the lines were still up. With the railway notified of the emergency, they immediately sent a steam engine, a cab forward 4188, equipped with one of their rotary snowplows. The steam engines were still being used for the rotaries at the time for two reasons. One, steam engines are hot. Really hot. They're warm. That's how they operate. So they're generally much better suited for the cold, for both the crews and themselves. And also, most of the plows that the Southern still had were steam-powered, so they kind of needed a steam engine for them. They hadn't replaced them with diesel or electric plows. 4188 was able to get up the eastbound track past the stuck city, and was able to cross over to the westbound track at Crystal Lake, then plow all the way back to where the city was. Great! So they can get them out, right? Well, the crew hand-shoveled the last few feet between the trains because it was a rotary and they didn't want to just, buzzsaw into that. That would not be good. And once the snow was clear, they coupled up, and 4188 tried to drag the diesels out of where they were stuck. But even with that, they still refused to move. 1619 remained in the snow. And she was probably like, hey, guys, do something! Then the air pump failed on the rotary, so they couldn't use that anymore, and as a result, another steam engine, 4245, with yet another rotary plow, headed up to try to assist. She went down the eastbound tracks from Norden, and then crossed over at Emigrant Gap, and plowed back to the front of the stranded consist. But once again, they could not make the city move. She was stuck, trapped, frozen. The ice was not having it. The diesels were stuck and the steam engines were like, what is your malfunction? This went on for a significant amount of time. But at first, the passengers and crew weren't overly concerned. I mean, yeah, they were inconvenienced, but the diesels were still on and their steam generators were still functioning. That meant the heat inside the passenger coaches was still working, and therefore the passengers were pretty comfortable. Plus, since this was supposed to be a multiple-day journey across the country, there was plenty of food stocked on board. So, initially, there wasn't really anything to panic about. It was just, oh, this is neat. But they could see the railway was working hard to free them, and they weren't freezing, nor were they hungry. There was even a doctor on board who volunteered to keep track of everyone's medical needs, should that be required. The conductor on board was Clyde Baldwin, and another trainmaster, R.D. Spence, was assisting him. Both opted to be honest with the passengers regarding their situation, and kept them up to date regarding the ongoing rescue efforts. This open communication made sure morale stayed fairly high, again, at first, as the crews outside braved the bitterly cold winds to try to amend the problem. By the following morning, January 14th, the cold in particular was becoming a serious concern because, well, the storm was still raging and the wind chill was not ideal, not doing it for anybody. Locomotive 4245, with her rotary, instead of trying to continually pull on the stranded train, had been tasked with instead clearing the westbound tracks back down towards Emigrant Gap for additional engines to arrive to try to, get any kind of motive power up here to pull the stupid train out of the ice. But 4245 herself would wind up being stranded. A massive drift was in the way, much larger than anything they'd experienced thus far, and it was even too big for the rotary. Yet another steam engine had attempted to come up the mountain with two rotary plows, because they were not playing anymore, but she was hit by an avalanche, with one of the rotaries being overturned. An engineer, Roland Raymond, would be buried and killed by this. So now we have a single death attributed to this crisis. Things were getting much worse. The westbound tracks were blocked on both sides, and the eastbound tracks became blocked as well. With this new information and situation, it was decided that, alright, maybe instead of trying to get the train out of here, we should just try to find a way to get the passengers out of here. because the passengers didn't need to stay on the train, technically. There were other options, and obviously, 1619 and her train were refusing to budge, and no amount of effort was going to fix that. Therefore, it was decided they were going to take them overland. Army-loaded tank-tracked weasels, as they were known, were set up on flat cars, as close as they could get, and then they tried to move through the snow to reach the train. But they also weren't able to get through. The snow was too wet. They wound up getting stuck themselves. But another vehicle, a snowcat, did manage to get through with some supplies to make sure everyone stayed comfortable and fed. The problem was the snowcat wasn't large enough to really carry anybody out of there. So it was decided to keep the passengers where they were until actual transportation could be arranged. On the night of the 14th, the steam heaters stopped working. This is because the steam boilers in the diesels, no longer could supply any more steam. They were done. But number 4188 was still on site, still stuck behind the train, and still had fuel. So they hooked her up to the steam heaters in order to keep the passengers from freezing. However, she was running low on water, so the crew had no choice but to start shoveling snow into her tender so it would melt, and that would make steam. This is not a very efficient way of handling it, but to be fair, there was a lot of snow, and what else were they gonna do? While the snow may have been somewhat helpful for that, more alarmingly, it had managed to clog the exhausts that were on the Pullman cars. That caused carbon monoxide to build up inside the train, which is very, very bad. 30 passengers had to be rescued from a locked sleeping compartment and actually carried to fresh air. Thankfully, crews realized what was happening very quickly and were able to save everybody. No one died as a result of the carbon monoxide, but it was still one of those things where it was like, oh, okay, all right, things are quickly unraveling now. By the 15th, it was still snowing. When is it going to stop snowing? Well, to be fair, the storm was slowing down a bit. There were breaks in the storm. It wasn't snowing constantly. So, a dog sled team carrying a doctor named Larry Nelson rendezvoused with the snowcat. There were 4 passengers there that needed medical attention, and the doctor that was on board, he was doing his best, but didn't have a lot of supplies, obviously. The breaks in the storm allowed them to send helicopters up, which dropped additional food and supplies, and a rescue train had finally made it to Colfax, while the highway department was clearing Highway 40 nearby. A team of section workers worked day and night with shovels to dig out the blasted passenger cars and clear a path down the steep mountainside to the highway. The plan was to make it so the passengers could safely walk down to the road, and then they could just be driven out of there. Passengers could see the progress being made, and that was good, but a lot of them were getting really impatient and a bit alarmed. I mean, they already had to deal with the carbon monoxide, but also the steam heat was starting to run low. 4188 only had so much fuel on board, and the battery-powered electric lamps were starting to dim. With the steam heat running out, the pipes froze and the toilets backed up too. So really, no one was in a good mood anymore. At first they were like, it'll be fine, they'll take care of it, and now it was like, get us out of here, okay? This is ridiculous. But to the railroad's credit, they were doing their best. This was not really their fault. It was just one of those things. With things getting colder, passengers resorted to wrapping themselves in tablecloths and window curtains from the coaches because they didn't have anything else. By the 16th, it was still hilariously cold, but the storm had stopped. It wasn't snowing anymore. And that was very good, because the shovelers were able to complete the trail down the hillside to the highway. The highway department had also managed to clear the highway for traffic, so they could actually get vehicles out there. A consist of vehicles sent by the highway department, as well as private cars driven from the Nyack Lodge, headed up the road and waited to the side, while the passengers were directed to trudge down the path to reach the vehicles. Only a handful had to be carried, and no one was seriously ill or injured. By 8:50 p.m., every single one of them had been taken by road to the rescue train, and that train departed for San Francisco. With passengers finally out of harm's way, attention could turn to, alright, you're still stuck here. Interesting. What are we gonna do about that? Well, it took some time. 3 more days, in fact. All the crews could do was just keep hammering and digging away at the train until the diesels were finally able to to be pulled out, not using another train, but instead using Caterpillar tractors that belonged to Sacramento area contractors. On the 22nd, however, another storm closed down the mountains, and the railway did not dare attempt to get another city train through there. It wasn't until the 27th that the lines were actually genuinely cleared up and operations returned to normal. It was a pretty serious situation that fortunately only resulted in a single fatality, and not even among the passengers, just bad luck from one of the rescuers, sadly, hit by an avalanche. It's gone down in history as a particularly fascinating incident, as it shows what can happen, well, when Mother Nature decides, actually, I don't really want any trains running through here right now. And she didn't. And they didn't. Because there was snow all over the place. Ah! Till next time, this is Darkness, and I bid you all a fun farewell.